Good afternoon. Welcome back to the Fresh Start with Dr. David podcast. I'm here with a special guest today, Eden, and I'm really excited to talk to her and talk about her story. As you know, the Fresh Start with Dr. David podcast is a podcast where you get to get a fresh start on your outlook, your perspective, your vantage point, your options, your choices, your decisions, and the solutions that you come up with. So this podcast is not just about problems and griping and complaints. It's about solutions, right? And so that's what I want to do, is be able to give you a fresh start with each episode. So definitely, if you haven't done so already, please tune in. Please subscribe. Please positively rate this podcast. Give it 5 stars if you get benefit from it. I would deeply appreciate that. Share it with your friends and family. Also, please donate to this podcast. As I've said in earlier podcasts, this podcast is something that I share with you. It's free right now. It's not something that you have to pay for, and I'd like to keep it that way. It's also a place where I talk about the 501c3 that I started, the Resilience Project, which is a project that I started to help teens, adolescents, and young adults with mental health issues, life coaching, therapeutic techniques, and a life coping skills so they don't become the next generation of people who need psychiatric care. And if you looked at some of the recent things in the news, with students, with adolescents, with children, with teens, with young adults, and the high rate of mental health issues they have, especially things like anxiety and panic attacks and panic disorders, you can tell that this country really does have a mental health epidemic. And it's been that way for a long time, especially since the pandemic, right? And I think in a lot of ways we have so many technological changes that it's even making it worse. We've got ChatGPT, we've got all this AI. So many people are completely tuned into their devices all the time that they're not spending time interacting with other humans. And I just don't think it's good. So please donate to this podcast. Please donate or email me about information about how to donate to the Resilience Project. It's really important. And I promise you, if you pay it forward towards helping teens, young adults, adolescents, it's going to come back to help you, because whether you like it or not, those are the people who are going to be taking care of you when you get old, right? So that's just the way it is. That's the nature of things. That's the cycle of life. So please play it forward. Please tune in. Please donate to this podcast. I really appreciate it. And it allows me to do things as well with my practice to help people who aren't in a position to pay and to offer discounts and things like that. So please do that. And check out the most recent episode. So earlier today, so this is a 2 podcast episode today. Earlier today, I recorded a podcast where I gave thanks to Oprah Winfrey, Super Soul Sundays, and Oprah's Thought for the Day newsletter, which I think is really good in terms of setting an intention and a focal point for each and every day. So if you don't start off with a focal point with an intention for each day, then you're just operating on automatic pilot. And that automatic pilot is most likely going to be where you left off yesterday, which may have been on a bad note. So you don't want to do that. You want to start every day off on a positive note with an intention that you critically and intentionally set to make your day go the way that you want it to go. So definitely check out that episode. Then also check out the recent episodes on self-care and self-love that I did with my client, an artist, performer, singer, and social media host, Phoenix Soul, and then the recent episode that I did with my client, Melat Tezera, about stability. So without further ado, let's start with today's podcast. So I've got a really special guest that I'd like to introduce you to today. Her name is Eden, and I want her to tell her story. I want to tell her story, and I want to express kind of my how upset I am that she's having to go through this as a guest of this country, as somebody who's trying to stay in this country and contribute to this country in a positive way. But some of the things, or lack thereof, that are preventing her from doing that just really get under my skin. And so I want to talk about that today. So without further ado, welcome, Eden.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. David. I'm honored to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. I am so proud of you for being brave and courageous and going out your comfort zones to do this. I know
Thank you
it's
so
probably not
much.
easy. You seem like a shy person to me, a little bit reserved, right?
Depends on the day.
Depends on the day. But I
Yeah.
appreciate you. It takes a lot of courage to do and have do this episode with me. I know I'm growing into kind of myself in terms of doing podcast episodes and speaking about things, but certainly for somebody who's never done it, it can be nerve
Hmm.
wracking. So thank you so much for giving of yourself. And regardless of what happens with your circumstances, I believe that by sharing your story and sharing your experiences and your opinions and feelings and thoughts, that even if it doesn't directly benefit you, it's going to benefit someone else.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, if you would, Eden, tell me a little bit about your recent experience with your visa
Hmm.
and your immigration status
Hmm.
and your ability to stay in the United States.
So I guess a little bit about the situation, so whoever's listening will get a better picture. I immigrated here from Israel 5 years ago. I moved here as a foreign student and recently graduated around a month ago. Did really good. Had almost like the three last semesters, all 4.0 GPA, like really high. Thank
Congratulations. That's
you.
awesome.
I've also
Amazing.
done a, thank you so much. I've done a minor in acting. I've been in theater before I even started college, before even high school. I've always been someone that worked in the art field, like side to side with studying, and I've always done things on the side. So,
Well,
a place like America seemed, especially a city like Atlanta that's so progressive and has so much diversity and just so many different kinds of people you can learn from, was this creative hub. And I just thought moving here was really a place that I could experience myself more and grow to the person that I want to be. And it had so much opportunities. That's why we call it the American dream. Because as much as this country is flawed, there are a lot of opportunities.
yes.
And I knew that art is the only thing I wanted to do, whether it's acting, writing, tattooing, illustrating, painting, any of those. Those are all things I'm good at. And I just wanted to do it here. So after moving here and graduating, I got approved for a work visa after graduation.
Okay.
And this work visa is called OPT, so it's basically not an H-1B visa that is the most common known work visa.
Okay.
It's an extension for your student visa for a year for work purposes. So this is an option that if there's any foreign students that started studying in this country, know that you do have that option after graduation, extending your visa for a year for work purposes, building a resume, and then going from there if you want to transfer to another visa to stay here. So I applied to that in around February and it was approved pretty quickly, like within a week.
February
And
of this year?
yes, of
Okay.
this year.
February
Yeah.
of 2023.
Yeah, very quick, and I had to make sure I wanted to do it before my graduation date, and I graduated March 16th, so I wanted to make sure I do it at least a month in advance. So then, usually, if it gets approved, you have a start date. You could choose your own start date, and what I always advise to people, choose a start date. You could choose your start date to be 3 months after graduation. Choose it as further as possible to give yourself time to find a job.
Mm-hmm.
So then after the start date, they give you 90 days that go towards unemployment, but on the 90th day of unemployment, you can't stay. So you need to find employment. It could even be volunteer work or really anything, internships, freelance work in the first 90 days to show that you're doing something with yourself.
90 days. Did you say 90 days?
Mm-hmm.
So let me just kind of understand this, right?
Yes.
It just, as somebody who was born in this country and takes a lot of stuff for granted,
Yes.
regarding, finding employment and jobs and things like that.
Yes.
After that's approved, you only have 90 days to find a job?
Yes.
90 days.
90 days. Yeah.
Do you think that's enough time to find a job?
Absolutely not. I honestly, this is where my, I guess, 2 cents comes in.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like being a foreign student here, you're literally put through limbo. Sometimes I really feel like I'm in a video game, and to elevate to a higher level, you keep having obstacles thrown at you. And I know that foreign students, we're not citizens of this country, but it would be nice to be treated with a little bit more humanity. That was my experience here. Another thing that we don't have the rights to is to legally work during college outside of campus. And on-campus jobs, are usually like only like $8 to $7 an hour. Some of them pay below the minimum wage.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
Below the minimum wage?
yeah, there's some positions that are like less than $8 an hour, like less than $7.25. So that's something that is not talked about enough, and they have to realize, like, yes, college is for studying, but some people need to be able to pay rent and be able to eat and be able to drive and pay for gas. And where do they expect the money to come from? I was lucky I was able to get grants for different things that I'm doing, but I do think basic like human rights, like if you're going to this country, paying for a college, getting education, showing your crafts and your talents and your intelligence, why shouldn't you be permitted to work at the same time if you're working towards a degree because you want to help better the economy or the work situation in America? And every other foreign country that we look at, foreign students, they can work, so that's another obstacle. So yes, to answer your question, I get 90 days.
And that's, how you get a sense of how my practices work, right?
Yes.
Regardless of the reason why somebody comes to me, to any of my practices, the basis of it is let's get to the root cause of the problem, right?
Yes.
And I think we just kind of uncovered a couple of root causes of things is because having 90 days after you graduate or after it's approved to find a job. I mean, most Americans, if you're an American and let's say you graduate from college at the top of your class, you're valedictorian. Now, yeah, there's some people who might actually have a job lined up before they graduate. That happens, right?
Yes.
Now, in some of those cases, it's working for people that they already know.
Absolutely.
Right? Or their parents or their family or a family friend or some other kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Or some company that they interned at or that they have a relationship with. But to me, just honestly, it's absurd that somebody would be expected to find a job in 90 days, especially if they weren't born in this country and they're not a citizen. 90 days to find it takes most HR departments and a month or two just to make all that happen. So that means basically, when we boil it down, when we get to the root cause, that means that you've got to find a job within about 2 weeks to 4 weeks and then wait on HR. And God forbid an HR department might make some mistakes or fumble some things. That is setting someone up to fail from the beginning.
Absolutely.
Do you feel that way?
100%. I honestly felt like that just my entire
90
life.
days?
Yeah.
90 days.
90 days.
What can you do in 90 days?
Honestly, so you don't wait for the 90 days to start. I started looking for jobs in 2021. Like literally 2 years before
You've
my
been
graduation.
searching for jobs for 2 years now already.
Yes. I've been always, since I moved here, I always thought a few years in advance of what I could do, trying to make those connections. Unfortunately, COVID times have slowed a lot of opportunities down. A lot of opportunities that were given to me kind of dwindled because of this pandemic. A lot of businesses, especially in the art scene, went bankrupt. And it was a really sad time, especially for, not just for artists, for everyone, both like the physical toll it took on people losing their family members, getting sick, but everything else. So what I did, I started looking for jobs so much earlier on. And there was a company that I've been interviewing with since October. It's the one I've been telling you about. And it's crazy how slow the process is. It could be like a position that's for June. They start interviewing people like, maybe early October, September, but the process is so slow. So if America knows that's how corporate jobs work, how can you let someone have 90 days?
So it sounds like a huge disconnect between the reality and practicality of how somebody finds and becomes unemployed or employed versus the visa process. So those aren't in alignment. To me, that's obvious. If it takes HR and processes like that lead to a hire, if it takes 60 days and 90 days and all this kind of stuff, and for them to go through candidates and have interviews and all this kind of stuff, but then the immigration policy represents 90 days, that's a huge, obvious disconnect. So that's a root cause of the problem from the beginning.
Absolutely. I honestly do believe, I don't want to sound negative, but I do believe that it's setting people up for failure.
Absolutely.
And, I think it's...
intentionally, probably.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think that's why a lot of foreign students, at least the one that I've known, most of them give up. It depends how bad you want something. But I think that you really need to get creative. The ones I've reached out to that graduated before me, a lot of them just built their own film companies. They decided to, instead of go for an H-1B visa, the classic route that people try to go, they went to like a business visa to build their own business. And that's the only thing. If you don't have a door, you have to build yourself your own door. But it's hard in 90 days.
Design a door.
Design a door in 90 days.
Wow.
It's a little bit of a tough project, you know.
And, you know, the word tough kind of brings us to kind of the subject matter for today.
Oh, yeah.
The focus, even though it's all part of a larger picture.
Yes.
And I think starting out with people kind of being set up to fail with 90 days, but we're going to talk about how that being set up to fail continues with the way that our government works and institutions like immigration and visa approvals, and then the actual transportation of your visa from the United States government to you via the U.S. Postal Service, which brings us to the meat and potatoes. So you, rather than me summarizing and describing your experience of what happened, you tell me or tell us what happened in terms of your visa. So you can start as far as you want in the beginning with the application. Yeah. You're applying for the visa. Yeah. You're being told that it was approved. And then maybe if you were alerted that it was being sent to you, and you just tell that story and we'll listen to you.
Yes. So like I said, I started applying for it in around February, like a month and a half before graduation. And it got approved really quickly. I got it approved in the beginning of February, and they shipped it in the beginning of March. So it was great. I was like, oh, I'm going to get a new visa before even graduating. And then I noticed that it said the USPS delivered the visa.
What?
Yeah, they said they delivered the visa on March 3rd.
Wait. So let's rewind.
Yes.
Right. So you applied for the visa on what date? Just so I can set up a mental timeline.
February 8th.
Okay, so February 8th, right? 2/08. That's when you applied for it, right?
Yes, and it got approved like literally less than a week later.
And so it was approved like somewhere around 2/15, February the 15th, somewhere around there.
Something like that.
15th, 14th, that time period, right? So it took a week. Right?
Yeah, very quick.
So now we're up to February the 15th, right? On our little timeline in space. And after February 15th, when did you get the notification that it had been shipped to you? Or did you get a confirmation that it was shipped?
I did. I got actually a letter in the mail saying it was like a letter from the immigration center.
Okay.
And it said that my visa has been approved.
Yes.
And that it should come in the next like few days. And they shipped it. I was like, okay, bet. Like, I'm going to keep looking at my mailbox. I'm also kind of like, when I really need something urgently, I'm the obsessive type to check my mailbox, you know, like 3 times a day on a minimum.
Oh,
like,
wow.
Literally look through the window and look like if the delivery mail guy is coming, you know, every time I hear their trucks, I like go down. Because your future trajectory depends on this visa that you need, right? Yes, and not to mention that's something we take for granted as citizens. Absolutely, the right to work, because for me to apply to jobs, they want to make sure I have the documents to be able to work, you know? Right. And I was already interviewing with companies during that time, so it was really important for me to get it. And then I saw that, like, it said in transit for a while on the website. I was like, okay. And I kept checking my mailbox every day.
And whose website are you saying that you thought it was in transit? Was it the Visa or Immigration website or U.S. Postal Service?
The Visa and Immigration website.
So they said, on their website, they said that your visa was in transport, right?
Yes.
Transition from their offices to you, right?
Yes. And every time I checked, like, it shows, like, basically, like, pending, like, still on the way. I was like, okay, interesting. But still, religiously, for the past 2 months, I've been going to my mailbox multiple times a day, sometimes at night, every time, like, you know, I even, like, look sometimes above the mail and around the trash to see if, like, God forbid, they accidentally misplaced it and threw it in the trash. I went that far. All right. And then a few days ago, I was like, you know what? Let me check the immigration page again, because I keep refreshing it, like, all the time. Right. And then, for some reason, I see it's been delivered on March 7th. Although it's like in transit, but now it like goes and like changes the past. March 7th. Delivered. So that's like 7 weeks ago. Yeah. So 7 weeks ago, on March 7th, and going back, March 15th is when they told you it was approved and would be delivered. I'm sorry, February the 15th. Oh, actually that was, yes. But then I got a letter from them on March 1st saying it's on the way. Okay.
And then fast forward to roughly around March the 8th,
Mm-hmm.
when you're being told that it's been delivered.
Yes.
Which, you know,
it hasn't,
going back from today was about 7 weeks.
Right.
And so 7 weeks ago, they said your visa had been delivered to your residence, to your address.
Yes.
But it wasn't.
It wasn't. I checked. I should also add that was the same week that my credit card that got shipped in the mail magically disappeared out of the mailbox. And I know it has never been delivered. Like, I check it all the time.
So it wasn't, and that builds us to where we're headed.
Yes.
So it wasn't just the thing from immigration or from visa that disappeared. It was also your credit card. So more than one thing that would have been delivered by the United States Postal Service. It was supposed to be
delivered in the same week.
It disappeared.
They didn't want to help me. I called them about the credit card in the beginning because with the visa, they notified me that it could take up to 16 weeks to get your visa, which is a really long time when you think about it. That's like 4 months.
16 weeks?
Yes.
That's the time span?
Yeah, up to 16 weeks. Right.
That's what, 4 months? Right?
Yes.
4 times 4 is
yes.
16.
It's more than 90 days when you think about it.
Yeah, it's 4 months.
Yeah.
120 days.
Yeah, so it's over like the
between 0 days and 120 days or 4 months.
You really don't know. Right.
16.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't even know where the address of the sender, which immigration center it's being sent from, because there is one in every city in this country. So I didn't know how long it will take, but I did know that I had a credit card coming in because mine was about to expire.
Okay.
Because it didn't show up, I was like, okay, maybe the one of the people in the mail delivery forgot to put it in and marked it as delivered, because that's the thing, it was marked delivered. And I got a notification in my email that day saying, okay, it's been delivered right now. I run to the mailbox to get my credit card. My mailbox is empty. So, and that was around the same time that the visa allegedly was supposed to get in. So that just shows us a lot about just the United States Postal Office and how they handle things. I called customer service. They did absolutely nothing to help me, and I had to have my account suspended for 2 weeks until I finally got the delivery of the first one. Like, for 2 weeks, I had no credit card, just had to use whatever cash I had on me.
So that actually did ultimately get delivered?
Yes, because they shipped a new one. I called the bank. The bank helped me.
Right.
And they delivered a new one.
But that wasn't the case with the visa?
No.
And before we talk about, like, some steps and solutions and let me just say, anybody out there who can help Eden, I would really appreciate it. You can reach out to me. You can email me at mlcofgreateratlanta@gmail.com. You can reach out to my practices or whatever. That's the reason why we're doing this episode, because this should not be happening. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a second. But, I mean, this should not be the experience of people. I tell people in 2021, I remember in the middle of COVID, I took a trip to Puerto Rico. And at that time in 2021, if you were going to a U.S. territory, because Puerto Rico is part of the United States, you had to prove with a 72-hour PCR test that you were COVID negative. And I got that done, and luckily my results came out on the same day that I arrived in Puerto Rico. But when I got to the airport in Puerto Rico, after I got my bags and everything, there were tons of security people there who had everything automated. They knew what I looked like. They knew where I got my lab testing done. They knew everything about me. They had my itinerary number for Expedia. It was all automated. In the United States, none of that's the case. And we're supposed to be the most advanced nation on the planet. Now, I'll say there are some places that have some technology, certainly, that we don't have, I think. And Israel comes to mind. When it comes to, like, technology and things like that, Israel's at the top of the list. But I just don't understand, in the most advanced nation in the world, why we can't have an automated system. And this is a system I'm talking about for U.S. citizens, right? We don't have that, but they have it in Puerto Rico. So how can Puerto Rico figure it out and we can't?
Yeah.
The same thing is true for Cuba. Cuba's not, Cuba is its own nation. But in Cuba, they have a vaccine for lung cancer. A vaccine for lung cancer. It's not in the United States. Why is that? So there are a lot of things that we need to fix. There are a lot of things we get right, but
Mm-hmm.
there are a whole bunch of things that we
Mm-hmm.
need to fix.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings me to the U.S. Postal Service. So, I'm not sure how many people remember this, but a few years ago, um, I can't remember if it was, a political ad. I believe it was a political ad, but it may have been a candidate. But basically, the ad basically was talking about the incompetence of the U.S. Postal Service and how we lose money as a country on it, right? Now, when people, and I'm just going to say this, I don't have anything against the U.S. Postal Service, but there are common memes about U.S. Postal Service, common things that people believe, right? One of those things that people believe is that people at the U.S. Postal Service have or might have a bad attitude because they can't get fired. That's a common thing. That's not something I'm saying or I'm making up. That's just a common belief. People believe that a lot of government employees, including people for the U.S. Postal Service, and I'm not saying all government employees, but specifically with the U.S. Postal Service, a lot of people believe that they really don't care because they're just waiting for their pension, they get benefits, and they really don't care. They just want to clock in, clock out, get a paycheck, and they can't be fired. That's the belief. That's not something I created. That's just a common belief, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it had to come from somewhere.
Right.
It didn't just appear out of nowhere. The other thing, too, is when I ship stuff, I don't ship at U.S. Postal Service. And one of the things that I noticed is at one point in time, maybe if you go back 10 or 15 years, it was cheaper to ship things to the U.S. Postal Service. And it's just like, okay, maybe it's not as reliable or as fast as UPS or FedEx, but I'll save a couple of bucks and it'll still get here. That's not even the case anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I know, people that I've talked to, and even when I've gone, excuse me, the last maybe time that I went to the U.S. Postal Service for something, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago or something, just to compare prices because I had to ship something large or I had to ship a bunch of stuff or the holidays or gifts or whatever. I looked at the prices and I'm like, I might as well go UPS. And they'd show prices. They'd show, this is U.S. Postal Service, and this is UPS, and this is FedEx. And the UPS price would be $1 cheaper. So instead of paying UPS $24, I'd pay the U.S. Postal Service $23. But then it would show up a week later, or 3 days later, or twice as much time. And it just didn't make sense. So I just said, okay, so I'm getting inferior service, but I'm going to pay about the same. What's the point?
Yeah.
And then I've got to pay, whatever for a tracking number and all that stuff. And everybody knows that UPS and FedEx have a much better, higher success rate and performance rate in terms of package delivery. And that's why people are willing to pay more. People would not be willing to pay more to ship stuff UPS and FedEx and maybe even airborne or overnight or whatever it is using those versus the U.S. Postal Service because they know it's 99.9% of the time they're going to get their package on time or early. Right?
Right.
So that's what the marketplace says. That's where the rubber hits the road.
Right.
But I do remember, commercials and advertisements that said basically that the U.S. Postal Service should be gotten rid of because it was just eating funds. It was incompetent. It didn't deliver what it was supposed to. And if it weren't part of the U.S. government, it would fail, right? So it kind of, it's like being too big to fail.
Yes.
Right? Like a bank that's too big to fail or something like that.
Yes.
But, when it comes to people's ability to stay in this country, and this, considering I'm just thinking, I would love to go to Israel. I have not been to Israel. I really would love to go to Tel Aviv. But I know that, synagogues here sponsor trips for people to go to Israel. And those trips are like, $7,000. I mean, they're expensive. So for somebody like you, depending on a visa, and it gets shipped through the least competent way, and you have no choice. You don't get to choose whether it goes UPS or FedEx or anything. And you've got 90 days, and your life is on the line depending on something like the U.S. Postal Service.
Right, and mind you, like the visa is $400 to apply for.
Wow. $400.
$400 just to apply, even if it doesn't guarantee that you'll stay. It's like playing limbo.
And the thing about it is, 90 days, so it goes back to what we were saying earlier. It's like setting you up to fail.
Yeah.
And not only that, we're not going to just make it so that you're set up to fail within 90 days and your ability to find employment within 90 days. We're going to set you up again to fail by getting the U.S. Postal Service to deliver your visa.
Yes.
Right? If I wanted to create, and this is the way that I think, reverse engineering. If I wanted to engineer a way for you to fail instead of succeeding, that's what I do.
Yeah.
I'd shorten the window period for you to get a job Okay, Eden, you've got 1 week to get a job. If you don't, you got to leave the country. And never mind the fact that it costs $7,000 for a flight, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing I'd do. And then I'd say, oh, well, yeah, I'm just going to send out your visa using the most unreliable means, most incompetent means possible. So we'll send it out UPS. We're not going to use FedEx or UPS or somewhere we could use collective bargaining with to get a lower rate.
Yeah.
No, we're going to use the most unreliable, the most incompetent, the means that most people don't choose when they've got important documents, right? When it comes to regular mail, credit card bills, stuff like that, it gets sent UPS, U.S. Postal Service. But when people want stuff that's important, like a credit card or like a passport or things that they can control how quickly it gets there or like a gift, what do they choose? UPS and FedEx. But we don't afford the same thing for somebody whose very livelihood and ability to stay in this country legally. We don't choose that.
Right.
So, you and I talked about some solutions, right? And, like I'll reiterate this again. Anybody out there who has resources, who has experience with these kind of circumstances, one of the things that we did in this office is I tried to pull up legal resources. So I looked up, pro bono legal aid for immigration cases and stuff like that. And I mean, a lot of stuff came up. A lot of organizations, the Southern Poverty Law Center came up. I believe they have an office here. Several other legal aid offices came up. But, the thing about it is you're operating against the clock now. So even if those organizations and institutions were able to help you, I don't know how much they can do before you have to leave. And that's the conundrum. So anybody out there who can help Eden, excuse me, whether you're an attorney or a judge or, you're part of an organization that helps students stay in this country legally, Eden is an illustrator. She's a talented illustrator. She graduated at the top of her class. She's hardworking. She's artistic in a lot of different ways. She's looking for an employment. She is a sprightly, shining example of the kind of talent we should want in this country.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And anybody out there who can do anything, I don't care if you know somebody who knows somebody at the U.S. Postal Service, at immigration, at the visa office, at an attorney's office, at a judge's office, a court system, I don't care. Reach out to me, please. My email address is mlcofgreateratlanta@gmail.com. Reach out to me. Now, Eden, tell me a little bit more about what you've done so far to kind of rectify this. You mentioned the part about the U.S. Postal Service. What happened when you tried to reach out to the immigration department?
They basically told me that they don't take responsibility for what happened and that I should just contact the USPS. And I said I did, but they basically said, well, you can apply for a new visa.
No.
And wait, and here's the thing, you also have to wait for the application process to finish for them to approve it. And after the approval, it takes more time and it could take, again, up to 120 days for them to ship your card. And then you have to pay another $400. What am I paying for an extra $400 for USPS, not being responsible? So I asked, and then I got, the first lady I talked to hung up on me in the middle of me talking in a sentence. She hung up. Yeah, and the immigration department, they don't really, I don't want to say this about everyone. I'm sure there is kind and nice people there that have sympathy. But some people look at foreign or, immigrants as, and human, they're above us and we're just below the ground.
As if you need them, but they don't need you.
Yeah,
is that
absolutely.
How it makes you feel?
Yes, and honestly, I don't know how some of the people were put in those positions because the minimum is, if you want to work for an immigration department, I'm assuming you want to be humane at least. And respect people and listen to the stories and try to position yourself. What would you do if you were in their shoes and how could you give them the best service from the position you're sitting in right now?
And that's called the golden rule, right?
Yes.
Treating people the way that you want to be treated. Basic, what you said, humanity.
Yes.
Being humane.
I know, what a concept these days.
It is. Because it's absent from so many things and I think COVID's made it worse.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the reasons, supposedly, now I think it's price gouging too, but supposedly one of the reasons why prices are inflated in this country is because of logistic issues, right? And logistics include the U.S. Postal Service and shipping stuff, right? It's just not production in factories, but it's getting things from one place to another. You know, whether you're talking about 18-wheelers and trucking companies and things like that, we've got some known logistic issues. And, you know, I just think it's kind of ironic that we recently had the most powerful rocket on the planet go up, you know, in flames or whatever recently. We can make it to foreign planets, and we've got a telescope that can see foreign galaxies, but we can't even get the mail delivered. Seriously. You know, here's a galaxy with, you know, aliens or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
We can see foreign galaxies and nebulas and black holes and stars, but your mail won't get there. But here's an image you can see of Alpha Centauri. You know, like, it's just such a disconnect.
Yeah.
What do you plan? So how much? Tell me. So just so I get a sense and people get a sense. How much time do you have left in this country, Eden, before you have to leave?
My start date is May 15th, and after May 15th, I have 90 days. And we're approaching the end of April, so I have about 105 days.
Wow. You know, I think of some of the things that that create anxiety and stress and worry in my life, and I just could not imagine. And I mean, honestly, excuse me, this is kind of a learning experience for me, because even though I've lived outside the United States, you know, I studied law in Europe after I finished college, you know, and I can't remember, like, I'm trying to remember, I had a passport at the time. I don't know about the visa and all that kind of stuff. It was in Holland, and I don't think I had to go through any of that stuff, or somebody else took care of it for me. But, you know, just when I kind of think about, you know, how stressful it is to find a job right after you just graduated from college, excuse me, finding a job in 90 days. And then on top of that, you've got the added worry of not having the documents that prove that you actually belong here. And when I think of some of the things that I see on the news, you know, just like interactions with people in the police, and when people don't have their registration or their tags or their driver's license and things like that. But, you know, it can be, you know, tense enough with American citizens, but when you're talking about somebody who has to prove that they even belong or are allowed to be in this country, that's doubly tough, because not only you've got the challenges associated with finding a job, but now you got to find a way to get the document that proves that you're allowed to stay here, that you spent money and waited for, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And when you just finished school, just tell me a little bit how you're feeling right now.
It's an interesting feeling. A part of me is like apathy, because I'm tired. I think, like, living
Exhausted.
Here. Exhausted. Yeah.
By this process. By this.
Yeah. It's been a really frustrating process, and more so than anything, it seems like this country is like doesn't have a problem like accepting us here to like come study and like help their economy, but after that it feels like they just don't care, you know.
Right.
And like it's not just like people in immigration, it's people that work at my school. Like some of the advice that I got from people working at the school was insane, like in a bad way. And it seems like you're trying to ask for help and questions, and like everyone just like sees you and closes the door. And it's not like you're asking them to give you anything. You just want help. You just want advice. You just want to ask them, well, this mistake is on you. How do we fix this, you know?
Right.
So, yeah, just very frustrated, and I think I got used to living here. There's a lot of problems in this country, but at least, I don't know how much I could say it's peaceful, but coming from the Middle East, it's very different, you know?
Yeah. What do you plan to do going forward? So let me just, so I understand the timeline again. I have to go back because that's just how my mind works, right? Yeah. So you said what date? May the 15th?
May 15th is
so
the
May 15th
start date.
Is the start date, and then 90 days from then.
Yeah.
So that's, let's see, June, July, August 15th, right? That's what you've been approved for. Not that you have proof of it, because of this whole thing with the U.S. Postal Service, but that's what you were approved
allegedly,
by the U.S. government by
Right.
immigration
Yeah.
to be here until
Yeah.
roughly the middle of
Yeah.
August.
Yeah.
And in addition to, the challenges and
Mm-hmm.
stress associated with finding a job, you
Yeah.
also are trying to get your visa
Yeah.
to stay here for that
Yeah.
period of time. What are you planning on doing? So that gives you let's see, 90 days plus 2 weeks. So that's roughly about 115 days that you have, because we're almost at the end
So
of April now.
105.
Something like that. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. About 105 days. So what do
Yes.
you plan on doing?
Honestly, I'll just keep applying to jobs at this point, and I'm probably going to try to see a pro bono lawyer to see like if I could just have the immigration office ship me, like, issue a new visa without me having to pay for it and reapply, because I'm not going to pay for a mistake I didn't make. Just based on principle alone, I'm not going to do it.
Right. You shouldn't have to.
I shouldn't have to, and I think like I was thinking of opening my own business, and
Right.
I don't know how to do it in 90 days, but I'm also a tattoo artist and I have a lot of tattoo experience already.
Okay.
So I'm looking for a space actually to create that, even if it's like a little space to rent, or a space that someone wouldn't mind like giving like a little booth to another artist. It could be a private studio. I would just love to do that. That would be enough for me in the beginning, because I could be like self-employed too. Just have to come up with a plan.
Right. And that brings me something that I noticed on social media recently, and then I'll kind of relate an anecdote about that, and then we'll kind of wrap up for today. But recently, and so I'll just say, so I use Facebook mainly for my Facebook groups. I have 3 Facebook groups. One is public. It's called Grow, capital GROW, all caps. And then I have 2 other groups that are not public. They're private. They're called Fresh Start with Dr. David Facebook group, and then New Balance with Dr. David. But on my mother's timeline, I noticed there was a video. And it was a video of this guy on a motorized bicycle, I believe it was, picking up all these groceries from Walmart. And I believe in the video they said that he lived a mile away, right? But the person who posted the video, and I think they posted multiple of this guy, carrying everything from televisions to groceries and everything. And he'd have like 18 bags of groceries, and he had all these zip ties and all these ingenious ways. And, and it was interesting. The video was informative. But I kind of commented, and I actually shared it on my Facebook page. So if you visit my Facebook page, if you do a search for David Wright and visit my Facebook page, you'll see a video if you scroll down. But I basically said this: instead of filming this guy and what he's doing, why don't we start a project to help him? Why don't we start a GoFundMe account for this guy and help this guy get a car? Mm-hmm. He's obviously struggling, Help one person, right? Yeah. Help one person. And we live in a society where everybody's kind of like a bystander. Everybody's standing by videotaping and recording and taking photos of everything and, oh, look at this. Why don't we actually act and help somebody, right? That's why I have the kind of practices that I do, to make a difference in someone's life by action, not by just observing and recording. Don't just record something. Don't just observe something. Actually help somebody, right? And I'm gonna make the same plea here for people today. Do something to help Eden. Pay it forward. Pay it forward, right? I will do whatever I can. I've, provided her with some resources. I've done some searches. I've reached out to some people, including one attorney here, whose advice that I trust and believe in. But use this as an opportunity to pay it forward. Make a call. Reach out to somebody. Ask somebody. Reach out to somebody who works in the legal system, who works in immigration, who works for U.S. Postal Service, who works for the consulate, who works for this or that. I don't care who it is, but do something to pay it forward. Don't just be an observer. Actually help somebody. And like I said, I will do whatever I can in my power to help you, Eden. I want to see you stay in this country. And, the thing about it is, there are a lot of different ways you can help. Maybe your company needs an illustrator. Every website has illustrations. I know mine does. I paid a company to create the logos from my website, and and things like that. I mean, Eden is an illustrator. She's a tattoo artist. Maybe you're a tattoo artist with a shop that can employ her. Maybe you're a tattoo shop owner or parlor owner who can help her with a job. Do something. Make a difference, right? Host somebody. Help somebody. Extend a hand. Pay it forward. Use karma. Um, Adversities are opportunities for us to grow as people. This experience is forcing Eden to grow and go outside her comfort zones in a lot of ways. It's actually teaching me a lot and helping me to not necessarily take for granted all the things that we're guaranteed by being American citizens in this country. But do something. If you have a company and you guys need help with your website, you need a graphic designer, you need an illustrator, you need things to help with your marketing efforts, hire Eden. Reach out to me. I'll put you in touch with her. If you've got a magazine that needs illustrations, reach out to me. If your company needs help with marketing things that require illustration, reach out to me. Reach out to me, pay it forward, help somebody. Be a beneficial force in this country.
Thank you so much, Dr. David. I appreciate all
You
of
are
this.
so
I
welcome.
appreciate this greatly. Even someone taking the time of day to actually be here and say, let's sit down and talk about this. That's very refreshing for people, even if they haven't necessarily been in the same position, wanting to create this form of, relatability and showing humanity, which shouldn't be rare.
That's the key here.
Yeah.
Who are we as a species? Humanity, right?
Yeah.
And it reminds me of kind of what I got through talking about earlier in the podcast that I did recently about AI and all this kind of stuff. All this technology is making it easier to do certain things. It's also making us lazy. Mm-hmm. But the thing that's lost in all this technology is humanity.
Humanity, yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. We're humans. We are a species. And if we don't act like it, we're going to lose it.
Absolutely.
We're going to lose it. And all the stuff that you see in science fiction movies, from The Matrix to Terminator and all that stuff, is going to become true because we are going to lose our humanity.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
So show some humanity and help Eden if you can. You can reach out to me. My email address, mlcofgreateratlanta@gmail.com. You can reach out to me on Facebook. You can reach out to me any way possible. You can reach out to me on my practice websites, www.mlcoga.com, www.atlantacoaching.com. You can reach out to me through my podcast, Fresh Start with Dr. David. But reach out to me. If you have any advice, if you have any resource, anybody you know, any person you know, related to any of these things, the U.S. Postal Service, Immigration Office, the Visa Office, employment opportunities for Eden as an illustrator, as a tattoo artist, or anything, please reach out to me and pay it forward. If we all pay it forward, we're going to make this country what it should be, right? We'll really make it the greatest country on earth. But we've got to do it, each one of us, with little bitty action steps and things that we can do to pay it forward. Hey, thanks so much for being a guest today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it so much. Thank you again.
And regardless of how this plays out, I wish you the best, whether it's here or in Israel or whatever. I promise you it's going to work out one way or another, and this process is going to bring out the best version of you.
Thank you so much, Dr. David. Thank you for having me on your podcast today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Definitely check out the other episodes that I did on self-care and self-love. And if there's anything you can do to help Eden, please reach out to me. And with that, I'm going to close out. Thanks so much, Eden. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.